All hail the Sith. No, just kidding. Yeah, so I was going to do an update anyway on the status of my sick PC, and I wanted to offer some criticism of Fallout 4, some constructive criticism, although I don't know if it can be construed as constructive because it might not be able to be helped. But as far as the PC is concerned, it's been an absolute nightmare. I sent it off early this week. It's now arrived in the UK. They've received it, but the weekend in all of this is the parcel service. I searched around. The cheapest I could find was something that allowed me to send it back for 200 euros, which is not cheap by any stretch. That can't be reimbursed. That's just, that's what it was. The parcel service is very unreliable. I had plastered all over the box when the parcel courier arrived in English and German. He turned out to be Polish. I think it's Polish people per se, but he didn't speak English or German, and so he couldn't read the thing. So I said, on the box, all over, fragile, very fragile, please handle with care. Ignored it. Also didn't know that it was 25 kilos plus in a big box, so I had to help him drag the thing down the stairs, and I'm on the fourth floor, 3 blocks away to where his van had parked, because no one had told him that he thought it was a small parcel. And because he wasn't listening to me, telling him in German that he has to move slowly because it will tear, two ends of the box where you used to put your hand in and then grip. My end tore, of course, because that's what was going to happen when you do that. It thunked onto the stairs, and already damage probably ensued. According to the people that I spoke to today, already at least superficially the case was damaged. So, the key issue here is not the people who are working on the PC and repairing it and built it. I am almost certain they did a thorough and a good job. That's what they're supposed to do. It's when it left the warehouse and went on through a third party, apparently, to be delivered. And this is a problem. Why is it a problem? Because these guys, DHL, you cannot trust them. I had extensive conversations with the people afterwards. One, a female representative who took my initial phone call, and then later a male who called me with a specific reference to my case. The woman admitted to me after I pressed her that, DHL is trying to cut corners by hiring cheap labor who don't speak English or German. German alone would have been enough. The guy calls me up, he admitted it, and then off the books, he tells me, just between you and me, off the books, I wouldn't ship anything important with our company, so that tells you all you need to know, right? I mean, arrive, it does. Arrive in perfect shape, it does not. So the key issue in getting this resolved is for them to use an alternative service, which they seem very reluctant to do, but I'm going to have to be insistent. And I'll tell you why. It's a bad deal for anyone. It's a bad deal for the company, and it's a bad deal for me. It's a bad deal for me because I don't want a broken PC, and I don't want to have to spend 200 euros every time sending the thing back, or even more possibly. It's a bad deal for them because they don't want to have to be constantly making repairs on something that didn't even need repairs in the very beginning, and then spending money replacing parts and so on and so forth. Not necessary. If they take the care to use a different parcel service or somebody that handles fragile wares, I don't know. It's not enough that they assure, usually these things arrive fine. That's not enough. That's not been my experience. They cannot use the same company that has demonstrably shown itself to be just shit when the employee working there tells you, don't ship anything important with us. So I think we're kind of looking not quite in the miracle range, but somewhere between the miracle range and the kind of a lot of luck to actually have everything fixed and then receive intact. That's what we're looking at. It is what it is. I can't do anything other than give them constant phone calls to remind them to use a different service. So that's solved. It's solved as much as I can't do anything on my end anymore. Regarding my criticism of Fallout 4, right now I have about 275 hours plus clocked in on the game, give or take. Probably I haven't looked recently, but something like that. So I've played the game extensively. Actually, I haven't finished it. Rather, just kind of start new characters and try out different builds. And one of the biggest issues I have is your build doesn't really matter. So this is going to be a criticism, and there are other criticisms, primarily the perk system. The perk system is kind of broken. It's kind of broken for a number of reasons. One reason it's broken is because of the dependence on perks on stats. So what you end up doing to get a few useful perks, let's take perception as an example. Perception overall is not terribly useful unless you use VATS excessively, and anyone who has any shooting experience knows you don't need VATS. You can just, put them in the iron sights or the scope. There's some lovely reflex scopes you can mod onto guns, and you don't need VATS. VATS is, I wouldn't say totally useless because it is useful in melee, very useful in melee, but outside of melee and unarmed, not very useful. But you have a perk such as lockpicking, which is useful. Every investment is useful from advance all the way to the final stage of lockpicking. And yeah, you have to invest in perception to get that. So it's just a kind of a stat dump. Even worse, one I would say is endurance. Endurance is just utterly useless. And why? Why is it utterly useless? Well, most of the perks are tied to sort of, enduring. The first two perks aren't too bad, damage resistance and life giver. After that, just forget about it. Why would you want a perk that allows you to eat irradiated food when there are cooking stations everywhere and you can cook it and get many more benefits from cooked food that will also heal you? Why would you take a perk like Ghoulish, right? Ghoulish that you heal by getting radiation poisoning. Now, what you don't know when you take that perk is you still get the overall capping of your total health pool. Meaning, yeah, you'll heal, so your damage will heal. At the same time, you'll lose total health because of what radiation does. And there's no fix to that. Why take it? Cannibalism looks cool, kind of as a role-playing thing, but there's stim packs, there's food, tons of stuff you could do or use alternatively. I suppose the last perk is somewhat useful, more strength, more endurance, then more healing. Okay, well, maybe, but it's not that critical. An entire system of perks, barring the first two, just totally useless. Thank the gods you only need to invest in 1 and 2, right? Take charisma. My current character, very heavy on charisma, passes with a charisma boosted gear, passes every speech check, graded intimidation and persuasion. But the perks actually associated with charisma, I'm not talking about the better shop prices or winning out at persuasion and intimidation. The perks associated with charisma are fairly useless. If you use companions, okay, whatever. I tried the best perks, supposedly, Wasteland Whisper and Intimidation. These perks are extremely hit or miss. I can't give you with absolute numbers my calculation, but I think based on my observation, probably the ratio is like 1 out of 5 times I was actually able to tame or pacify a raider or a gunner or a ghoul or a rad scorpion or whatever. If you increase the frequency to basically 50%, that's pretty good. Might be worth taking, but why would you take that then? 1 out of 5? That's 20%. It might not be that low, I don't know, but that's kind of based on my raw observation, and I used it quite a bit. Moreover, you can just kill enemies, and they die easily. You don't even need, more problems with the perks, you don't even need to invest in guns. It takes a shot or two more, so what? The perks are largely useless, and the only reason to take them are for role-playing reasons. Luck is useful pretty much only because of Idiot Savant. Okay, so let's talk about useless perks. Perception overall useless. Charisma somewhat useful. Luck somewhat useful just because of 1 perk, so you need basically a stat dump. Luck 5, so you get Idiot Savant. Agility is good if you want to sneak, but if you're not going to sneak and not use VATS, why bother? Intelligence is useful, lots of useful perks, especially when you use power armor, medicine, hacking, gun nut, science, etc. Strength is useful because you need the carry weight. If you're going to play a melee unarmed character, it's indispensable. And there are some good perks like for carrying more weight and what have you. So, but overall, in my opinion, this is my opinion, that's it. The perk system is deeply flawed. There's an Aussie named, I think his name is Fudge Muppet, And anyway, he makes these stupid videos. Is it worth it? Is perk X worth it? And he plays on normal too. So like, who fucking cares? Well, in my opinion, none of the perks are worth it. I mean, not really. You could go the entire game without investing in perks, and you'd be pretty much okay. I'd say that's bad design. Now, maybe I'm biased here, maybe. But I'd argue that even with upon release Skyrim vanilla perks, and I'm not talking about Skyrim Redone or Percus Maximus or Ordinator or whatever, but I would argue that in the case of Skyrim, the perks were useful. If you wanted to become proficient at magic, say destruction magic, you had to invest in it. And there were certain enemies that would outclass you and kill you very easily, and it was worth investing. And if you invested in that, that meant you couldn't invest in two-handed weapons or one-handed weapons. And so, there was a sense to the perks. It made sense to invest in them. Fallout, the perks are just kind of useless, and maybe that's to do with the genre. Skyrim is, after all, a kind of high fantasy game, and so there are certain fleshed out classes that they're sort of predefined, even though that system's not in place anymore. But of course, there were mods to sort of resurrect that, taking like Nightblade or Witch Hunter. I mean, these were pre-established classes that used certain perks and certain trees or schools, if you will, and it made sense. It made sense, even in vanilla. But with Fallout 4, it's just this kind of it doesn't really matter what perks you take. That's the thing. You can take anything. Yeah, I mean, you can invest in guns. You can invest in gun nut, and then your guns are overkill. Everything gets one-shotted before it even sees you. At 90 meters, dead, headshot. Easy. So that's a major issue. The perk system, I wouldn't say it needs a complete overhaul, but it needs a major, major overhaul, and hopefully some talented modder is going to do that. Other issue is general difficulty. The AI sucks. It needs to get better. Survival isn't enough. I want to see mods with weighted ammunition, so you really have to think hard. More difficult enemies, and not necessarily just in terms of hit points or health, which I guess has its place, but AI, more aggressive stuff. Raiders, instead of hiding behind corners, aggressively coming after you. Maybe moving from cover to cover, that kind of thing. It's just not there. So that's kind of a downer. And finally, and I mentioned this before, the role-playing aspects are pretty limited. So this idea that you have to play a good guy is kind of annoying. If you want to play a badass or a cunt, well, why not? And what I'm desperately hoping for, and I admit it's a vague hope, is that Bethesda decides for the DLC, in addition to the DLC, or as part of it, introduced the possibility of playing a raider-like character aligned with the bad guys, bringing suffering to the wasteland, because people enjoy that sometimes. Sometimes we enjoy bringing suffering to the residents of the wasteland. There aren't many opportunities that you can do that, and there's one quest called Diamond City Blues where you can kind of do that with this guy named Cook. He says, I got a plan to ambush people, and you can say, well, I have a better plan. I'll just shoot you now and take your notes, and then you can do that and whatever. But by and large, the opportunities are quite limited. But the worst thing about the game is definitely the perk system. Oh, and I forgot to mention, the last patch Bethesda released messed up textures, so it kind of flashes in and out for some people, including myself. So, yeah. That's pretty much what I have to say about Fallout 4. I'm kind of on a break now from Fallout 4, and I just can't envision myself playing it again until it's fixed by the modding community. And here I come to another point, I should add. Maybe I'm biased. Obviously Skyrim had a lot of flaws as well, but I almost feel, despite its kind of crisper graphics and the voice characters, that Fallout 4 was done in almost worse way than Skyrim. And I do prefer Elder Scrolls, I have to admit, but kind of slipshod. I think we're going to have to wait a good year for most of the major deficits and problems with the game to be fixed. And that's depressing. Plenty of other games to play, obviously, if I want to, but still. It's a great game, but I say great with quite a number of caveats, as I just mentioned beforehand. So, yeah, it needs a lot of work in many, many ways, and I'm pretty sure someone's going to, take that to heart. If it's not the developers, then someone else will, introduce or be a raider mod or revamp the perk system or whatever. I wouldn't mind making a mod myself. Of course, that all would depend on the amount of money I have, leisure time, etc. It's always one reason. So there you have it, folks. PC update and my scathing, withering criticism of Fallout 4, which isn't really that scathing. It's a fun game. It's also deeply flawed. So other games have been pushed back. I'm actually thinking about getting back into Divinity Original Sin. Kind of a cool game, and they had a revamp recently of it, and I haven't played in probably a year, so who knows? We'll see. Anyways, yeah, thanks for listening to me kind of rant, and there you have it. And of course, once the PC is fixed and it's actually working, I'll let you know, and I'll actually make a video on that PC letting you know that it's working and what have you. So thanks for giving a shit if you do, and if not, then thanks for passing by anyway. Everyone take care, and bye-bye.